introduce myself. My name is Wanjiko Wanyaki. I am in charge of business development and customer support at IPSL. IPSL has been, I think my CEO was here earlier. So IPSL started in 2016. So we've been in operation about 7 years. We connect banks to each other for instant payments, and we've expanded our network to also include customers from other institutions. So we've got fintechs, so fintech holders who've got wallets, we also incorporate them. We also incorporate, we've got one telco. We also have what we call SACCOs, or microfinance banks, also connected to our network. So what we look at is how do we grow our business and be more inclusive, so that it's not just bank-to-bank transfers. Okay. So when I look at merchant payments, for me, it's what I'm competing against is cash, right? So I have, if you can see, right? I have $100. I don't think there's a single merchant on this planet who would not take it, right? Right? So that is what we compete with when we talk about digital payments. How do we simulate the experience that a merchant gets when they deal with cash? Because that's what we compete against. So what we did was, how do we focus on their experiences? And there are 4 players in this ecosystem. There are merchants, there's the customer, there's a financial institution who holds the funds, right? And there's also a technology provider behind it. So let me start with what I would say is the merchant experience, yeah? The experience of cash, me giving it to you as a merchant, it's simple, right? So when we look at merchants, why do we take them through hoops? It should not be difficult to use. It should be so simple that they don't need to read a manual to get on board. How does the merchant actually get the technology? That's a big challenge for them. Do they need to sign 700 forms? Do they need to provide their firstborn child to give them a terminal, right? If you think about even, why has card penetration or card acquiring? Oh, okay, sorry, thanks. Yeah. Why has card acquiring not scaled? It's the cost of the terminal, right? How do I know that I've actually received the money? When I give it to you, you've got instant notification, right? You held it in your hand, you got instant notification. How does the merchant get notification? How do they know that you've paid them? Reconciliation at the end of the day. You look at merchants still, they have a bunch of cash, they're able to do the reconciliation. They know exactly how much they got. So when we build our technology to support them, these are some of the things that we need to seriously consider. Reversals, refunds. If I give you this and I don't want the product, to give me back my cash. How do you actually deal with refunds? Yeah. Then who has it? So you give me this technology, but who's going to use it? What customers are going to come to me? Why should I invest in it? So understanding who the customer segmentation for each of your individual merchants is very key. And how much is it going to cost? If it's going to cost 10%, forget it. It's not part of my product, right? It has to be low cost. It has to be low cost in terms of the technology that's required and the cost of actually acquiring that cash. Because cash, it doesn't cost you anything to receive the cash. And then what channels do I need? Is my business an in-person business, right? Is it an e-commerce business? Is it integrated into my ERP? These are all the things that we need to factor in when we talk about merchant payments. When it comes to the customer experience, it has to be simple. How am I going to access it? What channels are you going to provide? When we talk about inclusive, do I need a smartphone to actually accept this, to actually initiate these transactions? How do I know that it's been paid? When you debit my account, do I get notifications? Is it pray and is it send and pray? If I need my money back, how do I get my money back? I'm not waiting 24 hours. Cash, I receive it instantly. So I need an instant refund. Who has it? Where do I find it? Then when we talk about financial institutions, the financial institution is both on the sender and the receiver, on the customer and also on the merchant side. The biggest cost to merchant to banks and also financial institutions is the cost of onboarding. How do I scale my onboarding? How do I reach thousands and thousands of customers without leaving my premises? Do I need an army? So onboarding is so critical to financial institutions because they need to put it in the hands of both the consumer and also the merchant. Then we have the tech providers, the ones who build the nice fancy apps, the ones who help you support the merchants. They're the ones who actually develop technology around it so that there's an experience behind it. A lot of merchants are not tech savvy. That's not their core business. So how do we actually build stuff for them that's simple to use? So the technology providers need to factor in how they are going to be party to this. How do they actually access these services? Is it only through a bank? How do we scale it so that any technology provider, any person with a bright idea, any college graduate or non-graduate, but somebody who has an idea, can actually develop the technology to support all these people in this ecosystem? Another point I would like you to consider when we talk about merchant inclusivity is about reliability. There has to be one point of truth. When I give you this, you know I've given it to you. I know, you know. So when we talk about digitally, how do we ensure that there's one point of truth? Security, fraud, fraud is happening all over the world. How do we say that? How does the merchant know that when a transaction happens, it is actually a true transaction and not something that was created out of the air? So that at the end of the day, when they go back to their bank, they find there's no money, right? But the goods are gone. They're very concerned about that. Who tells every party what's the transaction? There's a consumer, there's a merchant. How do they actually communicate? If I don't have internet, how do I get my notifications? What is the cost of those notifications? How do you provide it? What if it fails? What if one side says, I've got my approval, the other side says, I haven't seen anything? How do they go back and actually deal with failures in the ecosystem? So we use that to consider and build our product, right? So we're just about to launch person-to-merchant payments. And we've considered all these factors in building our product. So we have approached it. Sorry, I don't know if you can see it. Okay, so we've taken 3 approaches. We've taken the USSD approach because we want to be able to reach anyone. Most people have a feature phone and they're able to access these services. So we've built the functionality to enable any tech provider, any bank, to embed who has a USSD session to be able to experience a person-to-merchant payment. So validation was very critical. When I put in a number to identify the merchant, how do I know it's the real person? So account validation was one of the first steps that is part of the journey. We've also looked at how does the experience look at from an app perspective. So Similarly, you want to do validation, but similarly also you want to have great experience. So you can even embed QR payments to it. So not everyone who has a smartphone uses data. So for these transactions. So we also have a fallback situation where you can actually provide an experience for both. If your camera doesn't work, there's a fallback experience. If the QR works, then you can have that experience. And the last step in this journey is we want to embed what we call request to pay. E-commerce is something that is so critical. It's one of the fastest growing merchant experiences with Instagram and Facebook and all that. So how do we actually simulate these experiences on e-commerce? So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, again, incredibly exciting that we actually are hearing from an actual hub operator about their actual merchant payment solution. And so thank you very much for that, but you're not free yet. Kareem, I'd like to call you up as well. So in an ideal world, this is the way all of this works. We have a hub operator who's running product and customer experience saying, this is what I need. These are my problems. This is what I'm trying to solve. And on the other side, we in the Mojaloop community have a work stream lead for that exact use case, and that is Kareem. So Kareem here from Paces Labs is running the merchant payment work stream. And what we really hope that this entire week facilitates is the ability for the two of them to speak. And so we want to impose that right now. And I'll let Kareem talk about, tomorrow he'll be talking about progress they've made, but he's going to talk about now remaining questions that they might have, and first pose those to Wanjiku and then also to the rest of the audience. So Kareem, I'll let you take it.
Thanks, Steve. So much of what I wanted to speak about, my colleague Bonaparte, who is also part of our work stream with Warden, he has spoken about that what changes they are trying to implement. In our experience as the work which we are doing around this merchant payments work stream and the work which we will present tomorrow, I mean, we have already spoken about this, that the whole base technology which Mojaloop provides as a means to transfer funds. So essentially payments or merchant payments as we speak are also a fund transfer. But it has got much more nuance attached to it, as you spoke about that customer experience, merchant experience is important. If I'm trying to send money to an individual, I know them. I mean, the contract is between two of us. But when I'm trying to pay to a merchant, if that money transfer does not happen, or even if that transfer happens, but the merchant does not know about it, then we would have a fight that he'll not give the goods to me, or the services won't be delivered. So that brings into question various areas around disputes. And when we talk about payments, the word merchant payments encompasses a lot of variety that we earlier on acknowledged, that it can be online payments, it could be in-person remote payment, person-to-person payments in front of a merchant. And each type of payment has a different connotation when it comes to how you treat them in terms of risks and frauds. So a lot of work which we are trying to do is to create supporting tools that enable the adoption. So in that sense, I mean, we have been talking about QR codes a lot. So in your experience, do you think there's a need for increasing the adoption? Is there a need for giving certain tools for QR code generation, or when we talk about dynamic QRs or static QRs, do the implementation partners, the DFSPs, need certain tools which the hub should provide?
Yeah, so I love QR. I think it's just fantastic technology. One of the items that, to answer your question on QR, static QRs work very well. But sometimes technology fails you because you need a fallback. So if you think about how do you even distribute a QR code for a merchant who is on the street, there's weather, it gets erased, the cameras don't work. So there always has to be a fallback position on that. When we look at dynamic QR codes, if we can embed these generators within, a small little phone, right, for the merchant. So those are some of the tools that would actually help them, right? Because I think paper is on its way out.
Another area which I think I'd want to talk about is, have you come across this requirement or any other adopter also about fraud and risk management, especially in terms of context of merchant payments? Because if I'm paying online and I mean, the whole challenge attached to this adoption of digital payments is also how do you satisfy the customer that if they are paying, is there a risk associated with doing that payment and managing limits around those kind of payments? With P2P, the institution adopts a standard measure. One way of looking at it is saying that, the institution will manage it according to its risk appetite. But is there something which a central hub should do around fraud and risk management?
Definitely. I think that's also one of the areas that we're actually identifying. If you look at across the board, the cost of fraud tools is it's not cheap, right? So a lot of the merchant aggregators, merchants don't even have the ability to actually know what, or even the skills to know these are fraudulent transactions. These are, so there's fraud on both sides. There's fraud on the consumer side, where somebody gets my details and then maybe they're using my details to, do fraudulent transactions. But then on the other side, there's also the merchant who is, who has goods and services that they actually, they don't want you to find out later that these were fraudulent transactions. So I think there's an opportunity for the hub, such as ourselves, to run fraud tools on behalf of the industry so that we create that sense of security and reliability.
Yeah. So apart from this, there are a couple of areas which in our work stream we have been discussing, and I'll present in a bit more detail tomorrow. So those are one of the things is it's very common in card-based payments, instant payment notifications. So right now the way payments work in the payment system, the notification to a merchant, that's important, and especially if you are planning to deploy a solution. So for example, if it suggests a QR which is going to be deployed on every till, the person standing behind that till needs to get notified as soon as the payment is done. So the solutions around notification, again, one approach is that yes, the payment is handed over to the DFSP and they will manage the notifications. Or the other way is that the central hub has some means of some tooling to manage these delivery of notifications. So crediting the merchant is one part, but notifying them is the another thing. This, in our experience, has been an area which requires a lot of work. So generally, I mean, the theory is that the work which we have done is around merchant payments, enabling a centralized tool for helping DFSPs to manage their merchant management centrally. In your experience, when you guys are rolling out merchant payments, did you find a challenge in adoption that the institutions do not have robust merchant management systems, or because not every financial institution wants to do merchant business? So what was your experience?
Some of the experiences that we're trying to address is one, typically when you look at person-to-person payments, there are two notifications, one to either side. But now when you look at merchants, there's several layers. There's the owner of the business, they want to get notification. There's the person who's the cashier who needs notification. Maybe there's a system that's integrated that needs notification. Maybe there's even a bazaar or for a school. So there's several. So we realized that we needed to also build multiple notifications. Then the channel that we use for notifications. So for person to person, we would use SMS. But then now we realize that there's an opportunity also to send notifications through email, through the other channels that people can get notifications. So now we are looking at building these capabilities on top of it.
Steve, I can talk a lot about more areas which I have on my list, but probably time.
I mean, yeah, I think we're a little bit low, but I would like to open it up for a few minutes because we put you on the spot so much. So before we thank you, there are a number of other hub operators in the room. There's been a lot of great conversations, great opinions. I would very much like to hear from a few other hub operators or implementers in the room. Any thoughts from the R-Switch team that we can ask for? Can we get a mic over there? Sure.
Thank you, Steve. Quickly, can you share with us how you manage user experience? Because the users are for DFSPs, right? So the implementation and optimization on user experience need to be done at DFSP level. And also the adoption of the new rail. Share with us how you make the FSPs to optimize the user experience side.
Okay. So what we've done is we actually developed a user guide that we actually share with them. So we did a customer experiential guide so that they can see what the flows are. We actually also developed an app to also demo what we envision the user journey should be, right? With the most optimal experience. So the fewest steps. And most people, even when we're introducing the product, they quickly understand what the product is, especially when they see the demo app. So as a sales team, we go out, even marketing, we use these demo apps to actually showcase what the user journey should be and also what the experience is. And then we share with them the user guide that has a customer experience. So we use a customer experience company to help us build that.
Is the app only for demo purpose, or you also use it as end user application?
No, it's only for demo.
I would like to share my experience also because recently Pakistan also implemented through RAST system merchant payments. And one of the early findings was that everyone had their own interpretation of how a QR payment will work or how a request to pay journey should work. So what was helpful was that we created user experience journeys similar to, so it started with static journeys using Figma or Adobe XD, those kind of tools, but eventually ended up sharing of demo videos. So probably, I mean, why it's important is because when you go for a mass rollout, even if individual DFSP's app has their own unique way of presenting things, but if there are some consistent elements across the board, what kind of information should appear on a receipt in terms of transparency and everything. So that increases the adoption.
We are down to the last few minutes here, and since the lights came up, I can see Majuma in the back. I would love to hear if the ZEC team has any opinions to share on merchant payments. I know it's something you're thinking of. Do you have any thoughts you can share with us of what your priorities are, what you think is important for merchant payments? I told you I was going to call you out.
Yeah, you are definitely not joking there. Okay, it was interesting, presentation. Funny enough, we are definitely looking at something closely to what you presented in terms of QR code payments. I think you heard my colleague also mention something in those lines. So for us, with QR code, with merchant payments, it's more or less the ease of adoption and management of these merchant payment solutions, in as far as going as management of the agents that are running these solutions, and of course coming down to the cost. So I think the biggest thing for me is how to harmonize the conversation on the cost to make it business friendly. What we find is when we do roll out solutions and as a regulator trying to limit the cost to the customer, it may not be as business friendly for the merchant. So harmonizing that conversation to find a very business model. I think for me, that's the takeaway. How did you get to that balance where the merchant is walking away happy and also as a regulator, we're able to achieve our agenda to get the cost as low as possible? Thanks.
That's definitely crucial, is the bringing down the cost, because we all know that if we don't get it as close to free that both the merchant and the customer are thinking cash is, then it'll never take over. Anyone else want to say? We've got a minute and a half left. Any other feelings on merchant payments? All right, you've now seen who's running the merchant payment workstream. Very much hope that all of you hub operators reach out to Kareem, come to the session tomorrow, and we hope that this kind of dialogue is the direction we're moving as a community. So thank you both so much for doing that in front of everyone and for testing this out with us.